Good evening. I'm here to tell you a little bit more about how to find pride in what you do, especially if you end up doing something that you weren't expecting to be doing. I'm going to be doing this by telling you a little bit more about my story. So I was a graduate of University College in 2005, and until the end of 2004, I had no idea I was a good-looking guy, or at least a photogenic guy. I was on an exchange program to the University of Stellenbosch in South Africa, and this is where I was discovered as a model. A few weeks after that, I had 11 agencies around the world. And a few days after receiving my diploma from University College, not too far away from here, I was at a photo shoot at a lake in Russia, and standing there in these tiny little shorts, I started realizing that after all these years of studying, maybe actually the most obvious talent I have is to indirectly sell pants, or shoes, or a perfume. The years after that, things were a roller coaster. I worked in over 15 countries on 5 continents. I was the face of many international brands. I was living in New York, and I was doing catwalks there, and in Paris and Milan. But here's the interesting part. I could never be proud of what I was doing. I always felt this sense of embarrassment to admit to people that I'm a model. And because to me, it felt like it was a fluke. It felt like all I did to deserve this was to actually win the genetic lottery, for which I can only thank 2 people, which are here tonight, my parents. Now, why did I have these feelings? To me, it felt like there were 3 reasons for it, which is what I'm going to talk to you about. To me, it felt like I just got lucky. When all of this was going on, I was keeping an eye on my classmates and on my friends, and some of them, after graduation, moved on to a master's degree, studying hard, or they moved on to an actual normal job, going to their job every day. And there I was, not working every day, and if I would work, I would be flown to some amazing place where there was a driver waiting for me to take me to some fancy hotel. And what did I do for this? I didn't study to become a model. At that point, I hadn't really worked hard to become a model either. So let me give you an example of how far this feeling went. At some point, some years ago, I was selected to be the face of the perfume of a famous brand. And it was a bit of a different booking. Normally, a booking comes in about a day or a week in advance. But this booking came in 3 months in advance with a condition. I had 3 months' time to build up some photogenic muscles for the TV commercial. And those 3 months, I lived like a sport-obsessed monk. I was in the gym 5 times a week with my personal trainer. I was eating right. I was hardly drinking any alcohol. I was making sacrifices in my personal life and in my social life. And then, when this campaign finally came out, it was the biggest thing I'd ever done. I could see my face at the bus stop. I could see it on a building somewhere. I could just be watching TV, and all of a sudden, I would just be walking across the screen. And this should have been a moment of pride. It should have been a moment, if not pride, at least fulfillment. But I couldn't feel those things. I felt embarrassed because everything was just covered by this blanket of this feeling of being lucky. Now, this feeling of having been given something that I didn't deserve, combined with the sort of glamour of this job, made me quite concerned about what other people would think. So let me give you, there was this one conversation that I had in my last semester at UCU. I was in that semester combining the 2. I was studying, and on my days off, I was modeling. And then I had lunch with a classmate of mine after we both just had a day off. And we sat down for lunch, and I asked him, "What did you do yesterday?" And he told me, "Well, I went to football practice, and I watched a total of 3 movies. All right, it's a reasonable way to spend your day off. But then he asked me, "What did you do yesterday?" And before I knew it, I told him, "Well, I was in the south of Spain, jet skiing, while someone was taking pictures of me." And I don't remember exactly how that conversation continued from there, but all I remembered afterwards was thinking, like, oh boy, what kind of an arrogant guy must he think that I am? And I started realizing that because of the circumstances I was in, there was not that much of a difference between me sharing and me bragging. That there was not that much difference between me being enthusiastic about the craziness of my circumstances and bragging. So what I started doing was I started talking down on what I was doing. I would start making jokes about it just to show people, like, I know what it is that I'm doing. If I was talking about doing a runway, I would just say, all I need to do is put my left foot in front of the right. If I'm at a photo shoot, I would just say, well, my biggest mission is to not blink at unfortunate moments. But by always making these kind of jokes, by always talking down on my job, I started slowly talking down on myself as well a little bit. And I started believing it, I think, that maybe that is all I was good for. The third reason was, to me, it felt like I was not on the path that I was supposed to be. I was a student at University College, I was studying social psychology, and I was convinced that if you've studied something, that is what you should be doing in the years after that, many, many years after that. And after having trained my brain for years to become ready for this future, because of something that happened, all of a sudden, I was using not my brain, it felt like to me, but my body and my face. And somehow this felt less, it felt shallow. So there I was. On the one hand, I had this successful international modeling career, while on the other hand, I couldn't stop sort of defending what I was doing and trying to convince everyone that I was, still a normal guy and that I was doing something that I wasn't supposed to be doing. So I started, when I really realized that this was something that was bothering me, I started talking to the people that I cared about. I started talking to friends, to my wife, to my family, and started talking to them about these three things that I kept on feeling. And slowly while talking to them, I could sort of look at them in a different way. So let's go back to these same 3 points and look at them again. So, yes, I am 1.88 m. My body is built in a certain way, and if you take a picture of my face, they tend to come out okay. It's true, this is what you need to become a model. But there's been many things that happened since then that were actually up to me. I was traveling around without really having a home. I was spending months in Tokyo or in Paris without really having any of my family or my friends around. I packed my backpack and I moved to New York, not having a clue about who were the people that I would be meeting there, or if it would actually be a success what I was doing. And also, I managed to stay away from many of the temptations that come along with being in the modeling world. So slowly I started understanding that it didn't really matter how I got my foot in the door. It was actually the things that I did after that. Because if after this sort of first discovery, I would have just thanked my face and sat back down on the couch and just wait for my career to start, nothing would have happened. This was a big relief. I started realizing that people talk, and especially when you have a job as uncommon or as visible as mine, it's even easier for people to talk. And I finally realized that there was no way that I could convince personally every single one of these people that I wasn't letting it go into my head, that it was a very simple job. And instead of me trying to convince the entire world, I started listening to the people that I cared about. And if I listened carefully, they were all saying the same thing. Stop talking down on what you're doing. Stop defending what you're doing. Relax and actually enjoy this crazy experience that has come in your path. So, I was convinced I was not on the path I was supposed to be. I was wrong. I wasn't on the path that I thought I would be. Because there's actually so many different paths that you can take. If I had this conviction that this is what I studied, I shall now be a social psychologist. But life in the end does not work like that. If I look around me now, there's actually, I know many, many people that have ended up doing something that they never thought that they would be doing, that is completely unrelated to what they've studied. And I think for many of the students here, it might be the same thing. I think some of you are going to graduate and you're going to find a job in your field of interest, in your field of studies, and that's great. But I think there's others of you that might find this job in that field, and you know what? Maybe after a while realize that it's not as fun or as fulfilling as they thought it might be. Or it actually might be kind of difficult to find a job in that field, and you're going to have to get creative. You're just going to have to run with whatever there is and make it happen. So that's why I would like to give you this quote, which probably most of you know, which is made famous by John Lennon, which is, "Life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans." The sooner you can let go of what you thought that you were supposed to be doing, the sooner you can actually find peace and pride in what you're actually doing today. I ended up being a model. If someone would have told me this 10 years ago, I would have told them that they're absolutely crazy. But because of one afternoon in Cape Town, this is what happened. And you know what? I'm happy for it. Because all the things that I was so worried about that weren't supposed to happen are actually the exact same things that have given me so many unexpected experiences and have actually shaped me into who I am today. So, whatever it is that you end up doing, don't worry too much about how you got it started. Don't worry too much about what other people are thinking. And definitely don't worry too much about whether what you're doing is what you thought you were supposed to be doing. Because life is an adventure, and it's full of surprises. It took me about 10 years to figure this out, and I really hope that you can start today. Thank you.